Hey there, viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto channel. As you can see by the title of this live stream, it is an A.M.A. It's code word for Ask Me Anything. Granted, that's going to be limited in and of itself. What I'm going to try to do is take questions that come up over here in the comment section of the live stream, which after the live stream's over and this post on YouTube, you can't see it. So I'll try to read the question aloud, answer it the best of my ability. Now, some questions may have to have more questions to answer your questions. And in that case, that's kind of difficult to do because a lot of times this stream goes so fast. If I say, well, what about this? Or I need more information. It's sometimes hard to capture that again. Also, I'll put it right out in the open. I'm not an automotive expert, so if you have a very vehicle-specific question, unless it's something I've ran across personally, without a little bit of research, it's it can also be difficult to ask. So I'll put that right out there too. As you know, I've often said in videos, a lot of times when we fix various makes and models, it comes down to 80% research and 20% doing. And I got a perfect example of that coming up in a video coming out here pretty soon on a Ford Freestyle that came in with a no com on the ABS system, no speedometer, transmission wouldn't shift. The majority of that one was done looking at wire diagrams and printed papers on a clipboard and went right to the problem. So I'll do my best for you. No promises. This is my first one, and truthfully, I'm just winging it. So we'll go to the comments and see what we see. So Dick Lehman, I guess it would be, wants to know if I fixed my wife's van yet. So I assume he's regarding the timing belt, and that has not been done. But rest assured, when we do, it will be recorded. Not sure if I'll do it in a live stream or if I'll do it as a legitimate video. John Kroll asks if I do diesel. I assume he wants to know if I work on diesels, and very limited, John, would be the answer to that. Not with them anymore. I used to for a lot of years when I worked in my dad's shop, worked on a lot of heavy diesels, light diesels. But here, I don't have many customers that have them. I do basically just, normal maintenance and service. If something is beyond my ability or my skill set, I just tell it to the customer and they go to, a diesel shop. Let's see. Rick Anderson writes, you have so many different test lights. What is each for? So that's a good question, Rick. I have various test lights in the sense that they draw different types of amperage. So a lot of times if you're doing open circuit testing where you remove the components and you're substituting your test light, you have to make sure that you substitute an appropriate load. So let's say you brought in a truck and the fuel pump's bad, and the fuel pump doesn't work, but you want to check powers and grounds back there. You could get burned by using your standard test light, which most draw around 200 milliamps. If you stick that in there and you turn the key on and it lights up, you suspect, well, it lit up, I've got power back there, but do you have enough to carry the current that's required to operate the pump? So in which case I would grab, like my 5 amp test light, stick that in place. That's going to be your average current draw of a fuel pump. So essentially a car headlight, stick that in place, turn the key on, that thing's going to light up nice and bright. You can elect to do a voltage drop test or not, but if you're familiar enough with how bright that light burns, I guess that's my test lights in a nutshell. Let's see. So Ty Kapanisnik, I'm gonna murder your name, so get that out in the open. He says, how do you check for a vacuum leak on an intake without a smoke machine? So that can be done various ways. Scanner Danner really likes to use his water bottle. He'll do that, and you'll actually hear it hissing and sucking in the water at the source of the leak, assuming the leak is big enough. One other way that you can do it is probably more dangerous. If you like to live on the edge a little and want to risk explosion, is to use a little bit of brake parts cleaner. I probably shouldn't be giving you that advice, but it's my habit. A lot of times we'll look at the scan tool and you can either introduce propane or, brake parts cleaner. You see guys use all kinds of stuff along the intake, watching the fuel trims. When you get near the source of the leak, your fuel trim is going to go right off the chart. So the smoke machine is definitely the safer way. Do I prefer AGM, so your acid glass matte batteries, or free acid batteries? And I guess I would leave that at, I install what the vehicle came with, so if it came with, an AGM battery that's mounted under the seat, then, naturally that's what I'll put back in. If it was just a wet cell, lead acid battery, that's what I reinstall. As far as battery technology, battery construction, I'm not educated enough into them to say, yes, I would always upgrade to an AGM battery. Perhaps that's something you could research on your own, but I'm probably not the best person to ask for that. And, I'll be the first one to admit it. But, yeah, Colin Trout says that you can do like Scotty Kilmer, just use a cigar for your vacuum leaks. I don't know if that's really a good method to do there. Let's see. Bill Long wants to know, how's the weather? Cold, Bill. I think today it hit 20, so today was one of the warmer days. But I think tomorrow's is high of 0, so there won't be a temperature tomorrow. Bash 5995 wants to know when we're going to get another tool truck video. Oddly enough, those videos are popular. I don't know why. Perhaps because some of you folks don't get to see a tool truck on a regular basis. I've seen one for the past 20 years, so I don't think much of it. Perhaps I can woo my Mac man. We've never been on the Mac tool truck. He's got a pretty nice truck, lots of tools, so perhaps we could do that in the future. Let's see. What kind of bike do I ride? I assume you're talking pedal bikes, John. Most of my bikes are Trek, so I've got a Trek Fuel that I ride for a full suspension bike. I've got a Scott 29er hardtail that I ride in that, and then I've got a Trek Ion that I use for a cross bike. So hopefully that's what kind of bike he's talking about. Let's see here. Jay Lazan 93 wants to know why I do not have a toolbox tour. And I don't have an answer for that question other than the fact I don't know how to do it and make it of any value. I guess I don't see the huge need for it. But again, that's another one of those videos that is oddly popular. So perhaps I should go watch some to learn how to do it. I have lots of tools and I have multiple toolboxes. So I don't know if it's just like, open the drawer and, take the camera, here's my tools. Do you go through them one at a time? Because if we do, that's like a, 37-part series. So perhaps I'll look into that a little bit and, give that some consideration. Let's see. Yeah, Dr. Falcon 4102 says he hasn't seen a Mac tool truck in 28 years. Well, like I said, I'll talk to my guy, see if, he's up for it. Of course, I can't just go on with a camera, start waving it around, Let's see. Like I say, I'm going to probably struggle with some car questions, but Super M 1687 has a 2000 Expedition with a 6.8, so that's the big V10. Money lights on, no symptoms. AutoZone says it has your classic lean code, so your 171, 174. He has no access to a scanner. Generally, statistically, have any obvious assumptions. I hate making assumptions, I'll tell you that right now. So, possibilities are, vacuum leaks, obviously on the intake manifolds, which are plastic on those. And of course, too, you could also have, a skewed mass airflow reading, which could cause that, low fuel pressure, plugged injectors. But I guess statistically on the Fords, they are prone to vacuum leaks. Again, I wouldn't go and just throw a set of intake manifold gaskets on at a whim. I definitely would have it checked out to see, how far off the fuel trim readings are. I'm assuming they're probably in the, positive 20s, to make up for the lean, to generate that code. So I would have that checked out, figured out definitively. I mean, we just had one in one of our previous videos. Being here in the Northeast, the brake booster was rusted out on it, sucking vacuum through that. So there are a lot of possibilities. Mike McLife, not sure. Mike, he writes, what brand pads and rotors do I recommend? In the shop here, I use the Advance Auto, the Wherever Platinums in the brake pads. They come with stainless steel hardware. I have installed thousands of sets of those and have had very, very, very few comebacks. Probably, I would have to say less than 5 noise complaints or anything like that, or dust complaints. And I prefer the Wherever coated rotors with their, what was it, their unidirectional finish, their machine finish on it, as opposed to a bidirectional finish. I like those. I've used them for a few years now, enough to analyze or assess the fact that they do corrode slower than just your regular, steel rotors that you get in a box with a, a bidirectional finish on it. So with a non-directional finish, they come out non-directional finish on the coated rotor, so you get a little better pad contact right out of the box, and they do withstand corrosion quite well. They offer a 2-year warranty on them, or at least they do in our area, and yeah, they've just been, they've been really good for me. Let's see. Free Spirit, he writes, or she writes, one or the other. I'm assuming a he. I just lost the comment. Hold on, I'll get it for you. Did you ever work at a dealership or independent shop before I had my shop? I've never worked at a dealership. I did work for my dad from 1999 to 2005, and that's when I came here. December 2005 is when I opened this business. But I worked for him right out of high school, and of course, I should say I worked for him from 99 to 05, professionally, full time. But I grew up in the shop. Been, was born and raised in the shop. My parents have owned or had purchased this shop that I'm in now when I was 1 year old. So, I've just been around it my whole life, but no dealership experience whatsoever. David Fuller writes that Wagner brake pads are a joke. I don't know if I'm going to run, Wagner brake pads in the ground, but experience with Wagner brake pads, particularly the thermal quiet line. So it was kind of their higher end line. Now they have a next grade above that, but I did use a lot of Wagner thermal quiets, and I got haunted by a lot of Wagner thermal quiets. Perhaps, I'm talking, this is, 8 years ago, where I used those exclusively. I think I was using like Centrix rotors at the time, and they never haunted me right out of the gate. I love the idea that they had, the way they bonded their friction material to the backing plate, and I love the integrated shims. I thought that was great, particularly when we're dealing with, rust jacking, so, pad separation, separation from the shim, of course, then starts creating noise. So I love the idea of how they made the pad, but it seemed to be almost a year to date after you would install those, you would always have squealing complaints. And I used to think people are crazy, but then I would start driving them, and it was, regardless of what kind of vehicle it was on, it was always the same scenario. Light pedal braking, light braking applications, they would squeal like crazy. And you take the pads out, hardware's good, everything's lubed, but you look at the friction material, there was just what appeared to be like big pieces of metallic in them. And, you'd take and you'd get a new warranty them out, customer satisfaction, new set, they were good. A year later, same thing. So I did shy away from them. Just from my experience. Perhaps they're different now. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard thing. I don't want to use my customers' cars as guinea pigs. So for the time being, I use what works. The Disgruntled Mechanic, Mike from the Disgruntled Mechanic channel, wants to know about the 2018 SMA meetup. Question mark, question mark, question mark. I don't know. I don't know how many people would come to it. Granted, a lot of you folks said that you would. How I would host it, the logistics of it, I don't know. When I went to the Eric the Car Guy meetup last year, the year before, whatever it was, it's a big deal. I mean, you could see he's kind of, he's kind of stressed out. You're the host of the thing, and you got to put it together, the food, and right down to the porta potties. You got to figure it out. So perhaps my only dilemma is here. I've got parking for about 12 cars. Granted, there could be parking on the street, but this is pretty small town USA here in Avoca, New York. If all of a sudden 100 people showed up and started parking up and down the streets, I don't know. I'd probably have to find out somehow to notify the town like it's about to get real. Nobody knows their local mechanics, this YouTube celebrity, I guess, if you'll put a title with it. So I'll give it some thought. I assume that I would have to have it here because I would think that most people that watch the A.M.A channel would want to, see what they see. They want to see this backdrop. They want to see the little, 25 by 25 shop I work in here. Any thoughts on the GM 3.6 liter engine that came in the Malibus? Asks Matthew Lawson. Any thoughts on it? I think it's great. Hope GM keeps making them because they make us a ton of money on time and chains. But they are time and chain eating engines. I'll give them that. So you get the dreaded P0016, the 17, the 18, the 19. It's time and chains all day long on those. Jeff Mays asks, I wonder if he's related to Billy Mays. What's my favorite brand tool? And the answer to that question is I don't have one. It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about ratchets, I prefer snap-on ratchets. I really like the snap-on ratchets. If we're talking about air tools, I like Astro and Ingersoll Rand. So it's kind of specific to, I would say what we're talking about. I'm not a, diehard fanboy for Snap-on or Mac or anybody for that matter. Punch Maxi asks, do your customers know you film the repairs on their cars? Quite often, Punch Maxi, they do. And some people will ask me, like recently I just had an Equinox in with a 3 liter that I did time and chains on. If you guys follow us on Facebook, you've seen that. And that customer, asked me specifically, were you able to, film that job? And being that I was so sick, down with a cold or whatever it was, I didn't. But I do have several customers that ask me like, hey, if I brought my car in, would you film it? And usually it's, I don't want to put them in a categories like the younger generation, but we're going to say it's, the folks from like 20 to, perhaps mid 40s, above and beyond that, not that they're technically illiterate, but, I find that a lot of folks in that, later years don't, really care nor get on YouTube much. That seems to be our niche crowd, is that 20 to, probably 50-year-old crowd somewheres in there. I could be wrong on that. And some customers, I told them, or I'll tell them or ask them, and they just don't care. They just want to know if it's going to be done by 5. Paul C. writes, passed by the Avoca exit early the other week. It's, pretty no man land, and the snow tires have come in handy. The I-86 to Jamestown is brutal. You are correct. It is no man's land off good old exit 1. Let's see. I gotta slow these down here. Let's see. Frank Slattery, I believe that's how you say it. Frank Slattery writes, what brand of light-duty truck tires do you like or recommend? I guess it's going to depend on the application, Frank. On a light-duty truck tire, something that's going to last. I usually pick quality over anything. I personally like the Goodyear Wrangler AT. I guess they used to be the ATS, the AT Adventures they're called now. If you're looking for a decent, all-terrain type tire, they wear well. They're pretty forgiving on alignments. If your truck's not perfect, they do wear nice and square. And most people get around 50,000, 55,000 miles out of them, legit. I sell a lot of the Mastercraft line of tires. Not a big fan. I think, what is it? They're ATX. They got kind of a blockier AT type tread that tends to get pretty choppy. It really depends on what you're looking for. If it's, an HT tire, an AT tire, the Firestone ATs. I sell a lot of different brands, but I do like my Goodyears. That's a very debatable topic, just FYI. Everybody likes what they currently have typically. Brad Cullen writes, do you use WorldPack much in your neck of the woods? I do, Brad. I've recently, I would say within the last year, have signed up for WorldPack as a WorldPack purchaser, I guess it would be. And they have some great deals. You can get a lot of OEM parts around about the same price as you get them from the OEM. They do free overnight shipping, which is nice. So I do use my WorldPack account and have been trying to be more diligent to use it more. So that answers that. But I do also have access to most all OEMs next day delivery also. Missed one here. Where is it? Dang it. These things zip by so quick. So I'm Sabbath writes, so if you're doing a timing belt on a dual overhead cam Subaru and one of the cams moves about 4 teeth when the belt is off, how do you line it back up? I think you'll find, Sabbath, I should be correct on this, if you're doing a dual overhead cam or any of the EJ25 engines, when you have the timing, the crankshaft set, so your timing mark is lined up. If I remember correctly, all of your pistons are about halfway through their travel. So rotating the cam back to its original position shouldn't cause any damage. I'd have to see it, but I'm near certain on Subarus when the crankshaft is lined up with its dot, none of your pistons are at top dead center, so you don't have to worry about valve collision. On a dual overhead cam, I can't recall right offhand if the valves can hit each other. Let's say, your intakes are open and you're barring it over and you got all willy-nilly on it. If the exhaust valves will collide into the intake valves, I don't recall right offhand. If I had a camshaft move on me after I took the timing belt off, I would simply move it back. Some of the camshafts on the Subarus are under tension. They're kind of right at their breaking point. They'll be at the apex of the cam lobe. So when they're sitting there, you just bump that thing with your wrench and all of a sudden, boom, it snaps over. Or just grab it and line marks back up. And particularly on Subaru, the marks from the camshaft to the head aren't as important as the marks are that are on the belt. Your 22 and a half teeth or whatever the count is on those. I'd have to look it up. And then your 10 teeth, 15 teeth from cam to cam mark. So those I don't get too fussy on. Just, I've done so many of them, you'd think I'd know. I just throw the belt on, line up my marks, and pull the pin on the grenade, and away we go. Rick writes, have you ever considered advertising to new car dealers offering advanced diagnostic services? That's a good question, Rick, and I have not. Car dealers will laugh at you as an independent when you come in, particularly an independent with no certifications, no nothing. I go in and say, hey, I'm Eric, I can fix your car. They'll laugh you right out of the building. They're the dealer, they're the best, they'll tell you all day long. I do offer my services to independent shops which utilize my service, which is nice. Particularly there's one up the road here in the next town up. I'd probably fix a couple cars in a 2-week period, 2-3 cars every couple weeks for him. He calls, we got a great relationship. There's a couple more shops down in Bath. They'll call on occasions, mobile programming, mobile diagnostics. I go there usually after hours, we're out of here. So but as far as dealerships, no, nothing in the dealerships. Big Rig Will, he writes, how old is too old to get into the profession? Oops, lost it. Hold on 1 minute, guys. Oh yeah, you're on. Yeah, I'll call it. Okay. Sounds good. Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I forgot to tape off my windows. So we're going to get the constant or the occasional knock on the window. So we were getting back to Big Rig Will. How old is too old to get into the profession of auto repair? First question, and what's your opinion on tech schools and where did you go? So I guess to answer your first question, Will, I don't know. I don't know how old is too old. I guess it depends on your physical abilities. If you're, later in life, this job is, if you're going to be, heavy mechanic, you're going to do heavy engine work, lifting tires and stuff all day long. I suppose, regardless of how old you are, you're going to want to make sure you have the physical ability to do it. And then I don't really know how to say it, but the mental capacity to get up to speed and to learn and retain knowledge, that's required to repair cars. What's my opinion on tech school? I think tech schools are fine if you have no prior knowledge. I mean, you got to start somewhere, either in an apprenticeship with somebody who's a good teacher and willing to teach a novice. If not, I think a tech school is a viable option. Where did I go? I did not go to school. So that's the short answer to that. I never went to any tech schools, so that's the answer on that. Let's see, where are we? I know I missed a whole bunch. The Bull Moose Kitchen, and he writes, 2005 Honda Accord LX, just replaced the alternator and battery. The money late now says P0420 and a PO562. So what's the PO? Is the PO562? Is that the low voltage? Let me just check real quick. I don't know all my P codes right offhand, but I thought. Okay, let me get back to YouTube here. So the PO562, I'm assuming low voltage code was generated perhaps from your low battery or your alternator. Now that code should be clearable. If that code was to regenerate the 562, I would actually have to look up code setting criteria to see what it takes to generate that code. I'm trying to recall. I think I actually have a video on a Hyundai or a Kia or something that kept generating that code. I can't recall what the answer was to that one. Whatever sense circuit was using in the ECM to look at battery voltage was corrupt, or there was a broken wire on that. So I believe I do have a video on that. And then your PO420, they're usually pretty cut and dry. There are some variables when it comes to catalyst efficiency codes. Those, it's always my habit to go through. Is the engine and fuel control? I'm going to look at fuel trims naturally. I'm going to look at a lot of times at mode 6 data. I want to see how much the catalyst fouled by. I want to look at my switch times on my O2 sensors, or in your case, your AFR sensor. I'd be making sure that that works correctly before I put a converter on it. So hopefully that gives you, a little bit of ideas as to perhaps where to go. Stuzzman is in the house saying, good evening, Eric and everyone else. So welcome. Let's see. All right, these are zipping by. All-wheel drive, he writes, who closes the bus door when the bus driver gets off? That may just remain one of life's biggest mysteries, and I don't have the answer for it. Great question, though. Let's see. So Kelvin Weaver, he writes, hi, can an oil pump make a buzzing sound after warmed up when the engine has a load? I use a stethoscope and it's coming from the oil pump. I don't know, Kelvin. That's an interesting question. I guess perhaps, there is a lot of oil pumps have oil pressure relief valves built into them. I suppose they could chatter, under load once they, if they hit the relief pressure, perhaps you may hear that chattering or buzzing. I suppose depending on how the oil pump is driven, I'm just curious how you're listening to it with a stethoscope. I'm trying to think of what vehicle is going to have an oil pump that you can access, and I'm drawing a blank. I perhaps may look into how the oil pump is driven. Is this a, timing chain driven oil pump? Is it, a mechanical driven pump off the end of the crankshaft, like on GMs? Is it a distributor driven? And give some consideration to its drive unit as far as can the noise you'll be hearing, is that because of, its drive type, I suppose. That's a good question, Kelvin, and I wish I had the answer for you. Nothing I've ran across personally, so I don't really know. Maybe if there is, if you let us know what kind of engine it is, perhaps see if there's any TSVs on it. And I guess the other thing I would be concerned is is this just something that you happen to notice while, fiddling around with a stethoscope, or is there, is there really a legitimate concern, this loud buzzing noise, perhaps that you're trying to track down. So Chris Richardson writes, what is the one vehicle that makes you cringe when you see it to come on my lot? And Chris, I'll answer that quickly. That's Volkswagen. They give me cold chills. Oh. Let's see, we're going to have to, I forgot that you guys are going to call. So what we'll do, we'll have to take the phone off. Look, I apologize for this. There we go. So we'll take the phone off the hook. You got to worry about that again. Let's see. Oops. V Shorty has an 01 Tahoe with a 5.3, had the motor rebuilt, but it isn't quite right. Seems to hesitate or surge, has intake Diablo Sports Flow Master. Let's see, I guess I'm not sure what that is. Let me read this again. I'm getting crazy here. 01 Tahoe 5.3 had motor rebuilt, but isn't quite right. Seems to hesitate or surge. Has intake Diablo Sports Flow Master. Scan says multiple misfire and rear torque output codes. Track control light stays on. There's probably a lot of questions I could come up with this, V Shorty. I guess I'm unfamiliar with what the Diablo Sport Flowmaster is, or what it could possibly pertain to, this symptom. I would personally, if I had that vehicle and I had some drivability concerns with it, I would likely be looking at your traction control issues first, because traction control obviously has the ability to retard the engine, engine power, engine performance and stuff. So if that's not quite right, perhaps I would look there. Again, a lot of times when, you folks ask questions, there's a lot of counter questions I could have. Was the problem evident prior to replacing the engine or having it rebuilt? Or is this a problem that was generated, immediately after the rebuild? And with the multiple misfire, after putting in, in that 01, so you should have done a crankshaft relearn on it. That can generate multiple misfires without having misfires evident. So that's something that should be, would have to be done. And, I'd also want to know is, are the misfires legit? Do you indeed feel a misfire, or are you just having this, hesitation? So I wish I could answer that better for you. I feel kind of guilty when you guys do a super chat and I don't have the answer for you. So video NOLA, asked a question again here about these AGM batteries versus standard lead acid. We did answer that earlier, video. I do appreciate the super chat. My thought on that, again, I'll just do it in a nutshell. I replace the batteries with what they come with from the factory. If it's an AGM application, I use AGM. If it's a lead acid wet cell battery, that's what we put in place. As far as swapping from one to the next, I would encourage you to do your own research on that and see the advantages of AGM over a wet cell. So Kelvin Weaver, please guys, don't feel obligated to do a super chat. I'm just going to pick comments out through the comments, so please don't feel obligated to do that. So Chris Weaver, he's the one that wrote us about the oil pump drive vibration noise that he was hearing. He says the timing belt Suzuki Forenza, and it's very loud with or without a stethoscope. You can hear it from 1/8 of a mile away. I guess with that being said, Kelvin, if that vehicle came into my shop, I definitively identify the noise to be coming from the oil pump area. If I can pull the timing covers and I can get to that, timing belt driven oil pump, and I hear that's exactly where the chattering's coming from, I may be inclined at that point to put a mechanical oil pressure gauge on it and look to see, does the oil pressure, does it flutter and reflect what we're hearing? And if so, even if the gauge didn't at that point, if I knew the noise was in that area, I'd check, see if there's any service bulletins on it put out through Suzuki. And at that point, if there wasn't, I would say this is our best possible scenario, or, our best possible assessment is to replace this oil pump. This is where the noise is coming from. So, I perhaps would go with that. I hope that helps. Eric Gath again, perhaps. When you first started, how did it go? Were you able to support yourself and the business right away? Working on open my own shop, and it's definitely a little bit scary. That could be a live stream in and of its own, Eric. First of all, that's a fantastic name your parents gave you. Kudos to them. How did it go? It was, I guess scary is an understatement. When I opened my business, I opened with essentially the money in my pocket, and that was about it. There was a set of circumstances that led up to that. I won't get into that now. I was able to support myself. It was not an 8-to-5 job. So if you're entertaining that, forget about it. Or if you're thinking you're going to be home at 5 o'clock, forget about that too. Particularly if you're going to be a one-man show. Now, if you opened a shop and you say, had employees and this and that, that's a totally different scenario. The only experience I have is opening, my one-man band, and opened by myself. It took a lot of hard work. I didn't have my lifts. I didn't have my big air compressor. I didn't have the majority of tools I have now. I was quite frugal, and just knew that if I, had the customer basis, which I already had, moving from my parents' shop, a lot of my regular customers followed me, and I just worked. It's probably not a good, work ethic or whatever, but I worked essentially around the clock. There was nights that I would actually stay at my shop, and I would just do whatever I had to do because I had to pay bills. Plus I had to, have income and, pay my taxes and, everything there. Plus, purchase more tools to, grow my business. I had to purchase a lift. I had to, and I did not, my goal is to not take out any business loan. Because, if my business failed, I didn't want my business to fail and have to claim bankruptcy. So that was just the method I chose. I'd work on, on a jack and jack stands, or, I had my little small lift here over in the corner. And, that was it. That's what I started with. And as I saved up money, had extra, I would, purchase a lift, and then, make things easier so you can work a little more efficiently. So it certainly was scary. And it's not any less scary now. We're not guaranteed tomorrow or anything. My shop could burn down. Who knows? Of course, we have insurance for that. But yeah, I guess you can see what I'm saying. If you're scared, you're doing it right, I guess. Looks like somebody got banned or booted out by Budget. So, and Tom O'Connor says, good, honest answers, and that's the best I can do for you, is give you honest answers. It may not be the answers you want. I'm not going to blow smoke at you and say, oh yeah, change this part. I'm automotive Houdini. I'm not. Mike Walden wants to know what model of picoscope I use. I use the 4425. It's their automotive specific picoscope. Do I see Wheels Haas 70 writes, do you repair your own equipment or hire out? I'm assuming you're talking about shop equipment, Will. My lifts, I install and maintain them myself. When it comes to my tire balancer, I have that farmed out. My tire machine, I repair that myself if and when it breaks. Air compressor, I take care of that myself. AC machine, I take care of that myself within my limits. But mostly, I try to fix what I can myself with, information I can find. If it's something I need, like my wheel balancer, I'll farm that out. Guys here next day, charges an obscene amount of money and it's fixed, but you need it. I mean, you got to have it. You gotta go. Let's see, Eric, see Michael Bowie, perhaps. How did you learn about electrical diagnosis? That's a tough question, Michael. I would say on a job experience. So, working at my dad's shop, growing up in the industry. And I think the biggest thing, if you want to learn something, is you have to want to learn it. And if you want to learn it, you're going to figure it out, whether it's self-study, which a lot of my stuff has been, going to, training classes that are put out by, whoever. A lot of your local distributors, vendors, they'll have, 4 and 8 hour training classes. So you pick up what you can there and then just research. I mean, if you need to know how it works, then research it. In today's day and age with the internet, you know, you got stuff like there's tons of books. You got the Scanner Danner Premium channel where he, you know, takes you essentially through his college classes. You know, you can get his book, you can follow along, you can do that. But the fact of the matter is you have to want to learn, you have to have the ability to learn, you have to apply yourself. And then me, I'm more of a, you know, I read it, I may not retain it, but when I need it, you know, and I use it, and, you know, it's the hands-on that drives it home for me. That's the way I learn. Bringing a car, you know, like I say, we got a perfect example coming up on this Ford Freestyle. It had a system that I've never seen. It had this differential control module. It had a rear differential out of a Volvo. That's what Ford used in them. I have no idea how it works. It was taken down the network though. So, you know, crash course, theory and operation. How's this work? What's it required? Boom, you know, 10 minutes later, we got it fixed and, you know, out the door. So, so yeah, I hope that kind of helps answer that question. Yeah, Brandon F, frequent flyer here on the SMA channel. He writes, Scanner Danner Premium is a darn good start. And I would have to agree. If, you know, you can't afford to go to college, don't want to go to college, or, you know, you're already working a job, want to improve your skills, I can't say anything bad about his premium channel. I don't believe it's on YouTube anymore. He hosts it on his own site. You can buy his book through AES Wave, along with, you know, many other books put out by, you know, a lot of great authors, and really improve your skill set. Let's see. Yeah, and Jaron Wilson, who we've yet to determine if it's a boy or a girl, he or she writes, spend some time reading wiring diagrams too, and that's also great advice. You know, get to, like I say in my videos, get to know your enemy. You know, when you approach a vehicle, you need to know what you're going after and how the systems functions, and, you know, how to approach it. Let's see. The Rad Monkey writes, hello, I have a 14 Tundra, found oil leaking on the cam tower. Imagine that. Must be a 5.7, of course. Toyota mechanic saying because it wasn't leaking in the moment that I don't have anything, that I don't have to do anything. Should I go back and demand the fix? Well, Rad Monkey, I don't know what your warranty is through Toyota, but I can guarantee you, if you own a 5.7 liter Toyota, your cam towers will leak. It's inevitable. I would say don't let it go beyond your warranty period. If you're wanting it fixed for free at Toyota, you know, assuming you still have warranty on your 14, which I assume you do, they leak. It's a matter of fact. The fact that the dealer came out and, you know, perhaps played dumb with it is beyond me. That should be no new news to them. Toyota 5.7 cam towers, they leak oil. I mean, that's just the way it is. Let's see. Dr. John writes, I don't know if he's a real doctor or not. Eric, how is your Amazon store doing? Good. So as many of you know, we have an Amazon influencer account, as many people do on social media, where we can post stuff from Amazon and our Amazon store, or our Amazon influencer page, I guess it is now. Links are in the description of most all my videos, and on our home screen of YouTube, it says SMA Amazon Store. You click on that, in which case I've put in a host of various tools all from Amazon. If you purchase anything from there, or purchase anything from Amazon within the next 24 hours of visiting that store, we get a small percentage of the sale, and, you know, it helps us stay in production. Buy sweet stuff like my new camera we just got, tried it out today for the first time. So it's just kind of a way to help offset the time lost, you know, making videos. So I would say, you know, it does well. It has its ups and downs. Of course, December is always a hot month on Amazon. You know, everybody buying their, you know, Christmas gifts and things of that nature. So that's how that works. Sam from Tool Hut USA, if you guys have not checked out his channel, be sure and do so. Particularly if you're in a shop and you're thinking about programming. Sam from Tool Hut has a lot of fantastic videos on that, and has just recently started sharing some PowerPoint style case studies. He's a mobile tech, just like Keith down at New Level. If you don't know Keith or Sam, check out New Level Auto Diagnostics on YouTube, and Sam from Tool Hut USA. But his question is Mickey D or Duncan, and I assume he's talking about coffee. How will I answer that? I'm going to say Duncan for flavor, McDonald's because it's $1. So how's that sound? McDonald's gives me wicked heartburn, but it's only $1. So, I don't want to lose money. And Dunkin' Donuts, I just like their coffee. Typically drink my coffee black unless I go to Dunkin', then I get it light and sweet. The Keith New Level Special, I call it, because that's what he drinks. Let's see. So Evan Dickens writes, can I do a vid on flipping cars? It's funny that you ask that because I have actually thought of that, and not in the sense of saying, here's how we're going to go on Craigslist and buy a car and, turn around and hopefully make a profit. I thought it could be beneficial in ways such as this is what I'm going to look for when I go to purchase a used car, particularly on Craigslist or, want ads or, independent used car lot dealer. So I thought about that because I thought that video could have some value in it, simply because people bring me used cars often, mostly my customers, because I encourage them to do so. I strictly tell them, don't buy a used car unless I see it first, because if you're looking for that car in that $2,000 to $6,000 range, you can get a great deal or you can get a pile of poo, one or the other. So hopefully we find something in between that's a good value that perhaps just, needs tires or, some minor work that's, still a good deal, rust-free car. So I have entertained that idea, and for those reasons. Let's see what we got. Jaron Wilson says I could buy one of Scotty Kilmer's Toyotas. I don't know if he'd actually part with a Toyota. Let's see. Looks like you guys are having some conversation up in here. Joshua Moon Chow wants to know if I got a new Jeep hat. Well, no, I haven't. I have several Jeep hats. This just happens to be my Sunday morning hat. Let's see. Let somebody zip by here. Scott Smith, he writes, I'm thinking of getting a decent scan tool, looking at getting one that does ECM programming. Any suggestions? Well, Scott, I guess I would say right off the bat, I don't know of any scan tool that does ECM programmings by itself. Now, there may be that option out there. That's nothing I've seen currently. Now, some scan tools, so we're looking at scan tools as a standalone tool where we can read ECM data. We have bidirectional controls. We have some, programming capability where we may be able to, program keys, key fobs, write, injector IDs like on your Duramaxes, stuff of that nature. I don't know of any of them that do, ECM programming. That's typically a standalone device, a J2534 interface device. If I was to recommend someone to buy one, I have the Bosch VCI module here myself. If you're brand new to it, check out, there's a lot of videos out there, like I just mentioned about Sam at Tool Hut, check out his videos. He's got a lot of great advice on it, because you're going to want to do it with somebody who's done it before. I'll tell you that right now. Kudos to you if you can just grab a JBox and, figure it out on your own. There is lots of information out there. One good website, let me get it because I'm drawing a blank on it right now, is the nastf.org. I'll put a link down in the description. It's going to be a lot of fantastic information on OEM websites, cost of programming, updates, stuff like that. But you're going to need a standalone JBox, we would call them. I would encourage you to perhaps look at like someplace like AE Tools, who offers, bar none, the best tech support out there that I know of when it comes to, software problems, programming problems, because you're going to have them. That's just the way it is. So I would think, I would encourage you to look in that source. The Drew Tech J-Box is probably something I would say would be a good, starter interface device for, a newbie. So hopefully I answered your question, Scott. Let's see. So let's see. Cap writes 2001 4.3 Vortec. Doesn't like to start in cold weather. I can hear the fuel pump come on, but I had to let it warm up in the garage before it would start. Normally cranks over quite a few times. Again, without any more information on that, lots of options. You have the possibility of a skewed coolant temperature sensor, which will make them, extremely difficult to start. That's, let's say, 0 out, but your coolant temp sensor says it's 50, degrees Fahrenheit. It's not going to add the correct fuel mixture to get it started. On a 4.3, I mean, you could have, the bad fuel pressure regulator not maintaining fuel pressure, check valve in the fuel pump not maintaining, the pressure. They're pretty finicky. They need that, 55 to 60 pounds to make that, I guess, the spider injection, your poppet nozzles function. So sometimes with those, if you want to determine, is it my fuel pump or a fuel delivery problem, assuming the pump can build the correct pressure and it's, bleeding off to the pressure regulator or something. A lot of times you get in there and cycle the key a whole bunch of times, like 3 or 4 times, keep cycling it, let the fuel pump run, and then crank it real quick to see if it starts. A lot of times that'll help. But first, I guess I would grab some scan data to see what coolant temperature looks like. If that seems to be the time it always happens. Let's see. Jared Obernesser. I'm terrible with names. Eric, do you build rear differentials, GM 10 volt? I'm not sure. I want to invest in opinion depth tool, approximately $450 to do it yourself. So I guess the answer to that is yes and no. If it came in and it was a simple or simply needed, I guess, a ring and pinion, bearings for whatever reason, I do have a pinion depth tool. I would install it, select the correct shim, set the backlash, be done with it. If a vehicle came in, let's say that came in, catastrophic failure, the whole case is full of metal, or it spun a bearing race or a bearing cup in the case, and the case is junk. Depending on, your make and model, I would offer the customer a remanufactured one, perhaps through somebody like Jasper Engines, or a used unit, which you can usually pick up for a dime a dozen, particularly, a GM, 8.25 inch rear. So that's my answer to that. Hope it helps. Let's see. Greg Fiddler writes, what do you edit your videos with? I use a program called Video. Why'd you ask? Now I got to Google it. Video Pad Editor, Video Editor. Let me look. I'm sorry. Video Pad Editor is the program that I use primarily. I also use, oh gosh. Oh, sorry, Keith, if you're listening, I'll call you right back, buddy. Video Pad Editor and Pinnacle Studio 21 Ultra. So that is the two that I use. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Let's see. John Massengill writes, the video I did on the Dorman parts was a hoot. Glad you liked that, John. I thought it was pretty funny myself. Just showing what a little bit of editing can do to make a job that is typically miserable look like it's a piece of cake. So I guess with that being said, don't always believe what you see on the internet. With a little bit of fancy editing, you can make any job look easy. Oop. Wait for another question to pop up here. Oh, a couple of voicemails and everything else here. What do we got? Let's see. Emily Harrison writes, have you ever ripped out an engine? Oops, lost a comment here. To put in a project, off-roading at style, etc. So I did, Emily. I used to have an 81 Scrambler. So that's a Jeep. That's going to be your classic CJ8. That I did a full body off restoration. Did the whole thing, fiberglass tilt forward hood. Had all GM drivetrain in it, 350 turbo tranny, 383 stroker, so stroke 350 Chevy in it. New process gear to gear transfer case. That was one of my only projects that I've had where I did something like that. It gets expensive, like stupid expensive. So then I grew up, got married, had kids. Oh, James. Oh, let's see back here. James Overby writes, why the Jeep hat? That's a fantastic question, James. The Jeep hat is kind of fussy on how my hats fit. A lot of hats have the big, I call it the big bug deflector brim and the web mesh and stuff like that. Why the Jeep hat? I like the Jeep hat because it fits. It fits well. And it's the, it's like that, canvas type material. It covers up my gray hair. It fits my noodle well. That's the only reason I wear the Jeep hat. It fits well. Stephen Reed writes, is Hannah related to you? And Stephen, that is a question we can't answer on the SMA channel because it's always going to remain a mystery. Jamie K writes, has your Altel ever given you incorrect info or codes versus the Snap-on? To answer that question, yes, Jamie, all of my scan tools have given erroneous data at some point, including the Snap-on. I was just talking to my Snap-on guy about this today, about, not bashing tools and, other brands, stuff like that. And we both agreed, we come to the conclusion, everything has its problems. Every scan tool I own has a glitch of some sort or a feature you don't like. And erroneous data is one of those. And it will really burn your biscuits when it happens, because if you believe it, let's say you're activating a bidirectional control, you're assuming that function is coming on. Let's say you're at the other end of that circuit. Let's say you're back at the, the cam phaser and you're trying to activate it and your scan tool says it's, activating that solenoid and you're checking it with your scope or your test light or whatever the case may be, and it's not happening. Now you go to the ECM, you activate it again with your scan tool, it's not happening there, but it is on the other 3 cam phasers or whatever the case may be. You're assuming at that point you got a bad ECM. It's my habit because I've been burned by it so many times. I haven't been burned, financially by making the wrong call, but I've learned to say I never trust my scan tool, hardly ever. If I'm doing that and I'm getting ready to make a call on the ECM because I don't have an output control that is essentially being activated to the best of my knowledge, I switch scan tools, try it again. If that one doesn't work, I might try it with another scan tool. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's a good idea to have at least a couple scan tools, if you're working in an aftermarket shop, because you just don't trust them. And that's just the way it is. Yeah, Keith from New Level writes, the answer is to buy every scan tool available. It's sad to say, but there's a little bit of truth in that. Probably more than a little bit. Mike Smith asked the inevitable question of what scan tool do I prefer? I'm eating a Starburst, just FYI. It depends on what I'm working on, is the answer to that question. And that's, I guess that's the answer. That's the only answer to that question. Depends on what I'm working on. They all have their little niches that they work in better. My launch really likes Asians. The Varus that sits over here, that's fantastic on, a lot of domestics, particularly GM. Older Chryslers, like let's say pre-2003 Chryslers, I wouldn't even think about touching the Altel because that's so full of, glitchy or erroneous data that, no way. So it really depends. Eat a Starburst and talk at the same time. I plan on it, Panhead. Let's see, what do we got? He says a pink Starburst is the best, but we're eating a red. whatever flavor that is. I think they all taste the same. Chris Rainville says he's going to get me a Dorman hat. Well, don't do it, Chris, because I've already got one. I think it's over on the shelf or something. We call it the naughty hat. If you've been naughty, you'll wear the Dorman hat. Oops, oh, they're zipping by here. So Blazer Guy 1983 writes, "Hey Eric!" Exclamation point. 04 Liberty with a 3.7, 113K on it. Shakes at idle, worse when cold, did plugs, no change, no codes. Fuel pressure good, but shakes like at idle. Like the one in the Dakota you just had on video. So I guess if I was looking at a shaking engine, regardless of what it is, first thing I would look to see, what can cause vibrations. So felt vibrations in the cabin or vibrations that you see across the engine, failed motor mounts. I have done engine mounts on those 3.7, so that's, not unrealistic. You would also want to check, engine compression. Perhaps I would do a relative compression test just to see, how they are relative to each other. If you got, 160 in 5 holes and 130 in another, perhaps not enough to set a misfire code, but enough to get a felt vibration. I remember like on the Ford 4 liters where the harmonic balancers would spin on the rubber. So I would probably be inspecting, harmonic balancers, see if that's plausible. I'd be questioning my customer, did this happen, let's say, after a transmission replacement, because you got to remember you're turning the mass of that torque converter also. And then, depending on the engine, I would be looking, is this a balance shaft engine? Is there, possibility of, incorrect timing on the balance shaft, something of that nature? Specific to the 3.7 in the Liberty, I don't see enough of them to say that I've ever ran across that problem, short of, engine mounts. But I guess that would be my approach to anything, is, the stuff already stated. So hope that helps. John Christopherson, I guess it is Christopherson. He writes, "Do you have any fuel quality problems in your area? Would you consider doing a video on fuel quality, volatility testing, and explain octane ratings and alcohol content?" I'm not a scientist, man. I have done videos where I do test for alcohol content simply using a 100 milliliter graduated cylinder, 90 milliliters of fuel, 10 milliliters of water, and letting I guess it is the alcohol bond with the water. I don't know the technical terms. I know how to do a test in that regards. I'm not going to be your best person to explain octane ratings and alcohol content, volatility testing, short of researching that, myself to get you answers, which would be just secondhand. But as a general rule, I do not see fuel quality problems unless it is a vehicle that has, I take that back. We do have a lot of folks in the area who have their C4 Corvettes because for whatever reason, that's popular here. And they think they're beautiful and love them, and they leave them sitting constantly. And so it's not, you can see these vehicles come in and it could have fuel in it that's 2 years old. Yeah, that's when I start seeing fuel quality problems. But as a general rule, daily drivers, I think a lot of people like to place the blame on, water in the fuel. So I think that's just a scapegoat for, I don't know what's wrong with it. But personally, I've never seen that, or I don't see it often. I have seen it. I don't see it often. And usually when it is, water in the fuel, dirty fuel type of stuff, usually has a story behind it. I used, great grandpa's gas can, it's all rotted out. So, but as a general rule, I don't see poor fuel causing drivability problems as often as some people assume, I guess. Scott C. writes, "I got a 3800 Series 2. Once in a while, I get a PL 171, PL 172. Why am I drawing a blank here? Should have codes memorized, particularly these. I thought, 172. So we don't run across 172s that often because they're rich codes. I replaced the O2 sensors, also got no air leaks anywheres. Should I clean the MAF? Perhaps you could, Scott. Obviously, cleaning the mass airflow sensor, another debatable topic. How much damage can it cause? if you go onto the Wells VE channel, Wells Vehicle Electronics, Mike Becker there, they have a video on cleaning mass airflows, do some up close examinations of how much damage it can cause. Will I stop cleaning them? No, I still clean them all the time, but it's got some good information over there. One thing that comes to mind when I see a PO 171 and a 172, so I got a lean code and I got a rich code. One thing that comes to my mind is an EVAP purge solenoid, because that can give you both. It can give you both in a sense that, you fill up your tank with fuel and, your charcoal canister is saturated at that point. You start it up and, the engine sits there and actually runs rich as it scavenges out of the charcoal canister. So that's a possibility. And at the point the charcoal canister is empty, now it's just essentially a vacuum leak and will run lean. That would be my best guess as far as having rich and lean codes, or, skewed mass airflow that under reports at an idle, over reports at an idle, under reports at wide open throttle, or, cruising speed. So those are two possibilities. So I hope that helps answer your question there. Oops, I lost my video. Monk Fubar writes, write a book, man. Well, I can't write a book. I'm not book writing material. Any advice on making a truck back end heavy? Oops, lost it. Where'd it go? Oh, it's Emily Harrison again. She writes, I assume it's a she, hopefully. That just got awkward. Any advice on making a truck back end heavier for better traction in the snow? Well, what I use, Emily, is I use in the back of my Tundra, I put in 4 railroad ties, and they're heavy. They're heavier than heck. I know a lot of guys that use sandbags. Like I say, I just lay down 4 railroad ties in the back of my truck, gives you some hella traction back there. But a lot of folks just use, sand tubes and, lay them in the back. The only thing I would say, I've had people come in that, stick the 2x4 across the back or 2x6, like in the bed liner there, it has the slots where you can stick the 2x6, it holds it, and then they pile up like, concrete blocks, and they're just back there. And that's all good. And even the situation where I have like railroad ties and stuff, it's all good, but it is mass. So if you get in an accident, particularly head on, that's kind of, counterproductive. It's working against you in that force, or in that sense. The force will be with you and possibly through you. So if you do have whatever you have back there, use the tie down hooks, buy some cheap ratchet straps or some ratchet straps and, tie it down. So, if you're slamming on your brakes, if you, get in an accident, kiss the guardrails, whatever, last thing you want to do is have a cinder block coming flying through the back of your head. Or in my case, some 800 pounds of railroad ties going through the cab. So tie it down, whatever you put back there, tie it down. But I do like sandbags also, because in a pinch, you get out and, you're stuck. You just need a little traction, knife open one of them sandbags and keep it under the tire and away you go. So that's my thoughts. In the back of my Honda, I keep 2 bags of rock salt. So oddly enough, even being front wheel drive, it does keep the back end from getting all squirrely on you when you're driving way too fast on slippery roads. I have learned that the Honda does like to cut loose in the back end. Let's see, what do we got? Oops. So the Blazer guy comes back and writes, thanks, Eric. It's funny you mentioned the transmission being replaced in the 04 Liberty. The previous owner did replace it with the used ones. Engine mount appears to be in good shape. I'll try relative compression. Also, Blazer, question your customer. You can get a lot of answers just talking to your customer. Do not lead them into giving you the answer that they think you want, I guess I would say. But I certainly would be questioning them. Was this problem evident after the transmission was replaced? Because that could give you some good clues. Yeah, Rodney Farmer writes, like my roads need more salt. They do need more salt, Rodney. It keeps me in business. Every time I see a salt truck go by, I wave, give them the thumbs up, slip them a 20. Oops. Let's see. I thought I was reading one out. Crap. So Latu, Laatu writes, have you ever thought of having a Q&A session about car brands? Forester new and don't know if it's worth the trouble. Are there differences in US and Japan made Subaru cars? I guess to answer your first question, I have not entertained the idea of doing a Q&A session on particular car brands. Actually, this is my first Q&A session I've ever had in my life officially. So, and that was just thought up like an hour and a half ago. So as far as differences between US and Japanese brands, some of the Subarus we have here, the VIN numbers do start with J. They are Japanese made Subarus, but as far as the difference between the ones in the US and Japan, I don't know. Probably the steering wheel's on the other side. Short of researching something like that, honestly, I wouldn't know. And I would not be the best spokesperson on a specific brand simply because I deal with so many different brands. A lot of times it really doesn't matter to me what label is on the hood. I just know the car's broke. I need to fix it. And, life goes on. Let's see. Oops, crap. Man, this thing is getting the best of me here. Ernie, I guess it's Ernie Eggers, right? Have you ever been snowed out of the shop? I haven't. We don't get snow like that bad, where there's like, I don't know what you have to have, like 5 feet of snow. If we get a couple feet of snow, it's no big deal. But no, I've never been snowed out of my shop. Let's see. RL asks the question, or it doesn't ask a question, I guess he makes a statement. Take your kids and wife on a sporadic mini vacation. We do. We go lots of places, more so in the summertime than in the middle of winter. So, yeah, good statement, I guess. Andrew K asks, any experience with the Ease scan tool? I am familiar with the scan tool, Andrew. I have no experience with it and have never used it. Chris Smith, he writes, I think, didn't we already talk? We already talked to a Smith. Man, I hope I don't keep picking up the same people. Apologize if I do, but Eric, you have a great talent with automobiles, the most interesting man alive. Well, that's not true, Chris, but we'll go with it. What is your opinion? Gas engine, Lucas oil injector cleaner. I honestly, Chris, I'm the worst person to ask about snake oils or, what I guess we would commonly refer to as snake oils or anything you dump in the gas to perhaps alleviate a problem that you're having. Because simply if I have, plugged injectors, I've definitively proved it with injector drop testing or whatever means I use, I replace the injector. So I don't know. That would probably be more of a question for the forums, perhaps. There's a bazillion things on the market with the claim to fames of, fixing everything from rod bearings to cleaning injectors to, rebuilding the engine in a can. So perhaps you could take that question to the forums or guys who have tried various brands and have some kind of definitive proof, short of having a vehicle come in with a known injector problem, dumping some miracle juice in the tank, seeing that problem be corrected. I have zero experience with it. So I'll leave that at that. Let's see. Oops. Go back to where I was here. Where was I? Ah, crap. Let's see. Sorry for the delay, folks. I'm trying to figure this out here. Oops. are we? Every time I get about halfway read through one, it zips up on my screen. So Derek McWhirter, he writes, do you think Snap-on tools are worth the money, or are the cheaper competitors just as good? Do you think $100 for one ratchet is actually worth it because other people also have lifetime warranties for half? So I assume for half the price. I'm a little sensitive on my ratchets, Derek. The last thing I want to do is be pushing on a ratchet, administering full beans, and then have the head snap and lose some skin off my digits. In a professional shop, I have no problem paying for a Snap-on ratchet. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, Snap-on ratchets are my favorite ratchets simply because they take a lot of beef and they don't break. So, you know, I have several Snap-on ratchets, you know, that I'll gladly pay for. You know, obviously lifetime warranty. You know, these are all Snap-on ratchets here. You know, got quite a pile of them. I got more over in my other box. And then, you know, even this one here, you know, she's a Snap-on. It's an antique. I've got more in here too. I'm running out of hand space. So in my opinion, I do like my Snap-on ratchets, simply because I have tried, I'll put them right where they belong, you know, a host of other brands, including, you know, like Mac and Cornwell and others like that, and they break. And, you know, it sucks. Like, you know, when you're using it, you're pushing, you're doing something, and bam, you know, your ratchet breaks. Now you're like, you know, crap, I needed that, you know, that 12-inch flex head to do what I'm doing, and now all I've got is my straight ratchet. And, you know, it just ends up making for a frustrating day. Do Snap-on ratchets break? Absolutely. I've broke them. They take a lot of grief to break one, though. And, you know, I know their limits. So hopefully that answers that question. Personally, yes, I think Snap-on ratchets are worth it. Am I endorsed and sponsored by Snap-on? Not in any way, shape, or form. I do like the ratchets. Let's see. Ibram Mubin. No idea if that's how you pronounce it, but we're going with it. Recently bought a 2000 Honda Civic EX manual with 93K on it for $3,000. You think I got a good deal? Do you know of any pattern failures? So most 2000 Civics are going to be in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. It has a stick in it, which I'm jealous because I need that car so I can have your transmission put in mine. Pattern failure, so I'm assuming you've got the D17 engine. The pattern failure you're going to find is the head gasket at about 150 to 200,000. Pretty notorious for that. I've done lots of head gaskets on them. Other than that, I wouldn't say they're really notorious for anything. Around here, the ship cables tend to have issues with them, but that's due to environmental reasons. I did do the video on that one, that 03 or whatever it was, that broke the right front axle because I had that rubber dog around it. Of course, that's, you know, environmental also, or the elements that it's exposed to. Timing belt, you know, 93K on it. You got to do time belt water pump, buy OEM or buy an Asian kit. But other than that, you probably got a pretty good deal, assuming the car is rust free. So sight unseen, sounds like you did okay, I guess. How long have we been going here? Oh, it's the D16Y8 in a 2000. Okay. Boy, in a 2000 with a 1.6. Well, regardless, you're still up against your timing belt. I don't recall doing head gaskets on the 1.6s. Yeah, so yeah, 2000 would be a 1.6. That is my mistake. I don't know right offhand then. I apologize for that. You start talking vehicles, you know, 17 years old. They're long since been in the crusher, but yeah, I honestly don't know. Let's see. Again, it looks like there's some conversations going on down here that I haven't kept up with. So let's see. You build it, we destroy it. He writes, Mac Axis ratchets are good, but since Mac guy quit, I have to mail broken ones into Mac. Though I pass through distribution center 3 or more times a week. I agree that the new Mac Axis ratchets are fantastic. I actually have one. It's the only Mac ratchet I own. It is this one right here. That is their newest head design. Mac ratchets, you can typically drop a Kleenex on them and snap the head off them. They did come out with this one, which is a great ratchet. I have only broke it once, and it was entirely my fault. I had about a 5-foot pipe on it. It took a heck of a lot of beating. I was really, really shocked. I actually bent the handle before it snapped the anvil. So that one actually worked pretty good. I lied. I do have another Mac ratchet over in the other box. Let's see. Rodney Farmer, he writes, how many miles? Oops, where'd it go? Crap. I think this is kind of frustrating. I need somebody scanning my comments. Rodney Farmer writes, how many miles on an engine do you suggest changing timing belts? It's going to depend on manufacturer, Rodney. It always ends up falling somewhere between 60 and 100,000 miles. Most manufacturers are around that 100. Some say 105. Some say 60. If it's a Dodge Neon, I'm going to tell you 50. I believe, like Kia, I believe in their book it's 60 or 65,000. If you don't know, just change it. You know, if you're creeping up on somewhere between that 60 and 100K. I've had Hondas come in, you know, the Honda 3.5 engines with 180 on them on the original belt. You take it off, it still looks pretty decent. That's why I've been dragging my feet on Mrs. O's. So, yeah, so somewhere between 60 and 100. Look it up. It usually says right in your book. How many miles on Mrs. O's van? 117, 120, something like that, I imagine. I don't know. I never drive it. So Anthony Zeng, he writes, I've got a 95 Jeep Cherokee that pulls to the right when braking. I've replaced both front calipers and it's still pulling. I suspect the rear brakes, but can a master cylinder cause this? Well, Anthony, there's a lot of things that can make brake pull when the brakes are applied. Often neglected are your brake hoses. They can actually collapse and make uneven pressure. Certainly, as you stated, your rear brakes can also make a brake pull. That's a pretty wide open question. There's a lot of things that can make a pull. Can't say I've ever seen a master cylinder do that, particularly if it's a vehicle with ABS. Typically, your master cylinder is reserved for, you know, front brakes, rear brakes. Some master cylinders are, you know, individual wheel 4-line master cylinders. Not too often. They usually go to some kind of proportioning valve prior to going to the front wheels. So I would have to say I doubt that it would be in a master cylinder. Short of seeing it, you know, I couldn't, you know, make that call 100%, you know, just over the internet here. I suppose we could probably take a few more here. I don't even know how long we've been doing this, folks. There's still 1,200 people. 1,200 people with nothing to do, apparently. And we've been doing it for, what time did we start? 5:45. Holy crap, this kid. We've been at it for a while. Hour and 15 minutes, I guess. How reliable are the J35 engines, in my opinion? I love the J35. Short of the occasional, you know, cylinder 4, cylinder 5 valve issue, I think they're great. I think a lot of the valve problems on the Hondas can be avoided by a simple valve adjustment. As you know, as an engine ages, valves typically get tighter. If you have an exhaust valve that gets too tight, now the valve can't cool properly. It never, you know, it doesn't seat against the valve seat all the way. And then typically you'll find that's where they burn. So, you know, overall, I think the J35 engine is beautiful. I have several customers, you know, over 300,000 miles on them with no issues. So, but, you know, of course, properly maintained. Looks like it must be Keith is in the comments here, helping people out. I wouldn't doubt it. That's what he does. Let's see what else we have. Frugal Prepper, he writes, we have other things to do, Eric. When your live stream comes on, we put life on hold. Well, thanks, Tom. Let's see. Oops, I got to get my video back up. Apparently, they're talking with somebody about some flex plate problems, is what I've assessed here. So that's an odd question here. Let's see, where is it? The pandemic. He writes, Eric, what kind of boots do you wear? Seems like a legit question. I wear Red Wings, particularly. I wear the Hunter series. So these are, I like an 8-inch boot personally. I like them with little or no insulation and waterproof. I wear an 8-inch boot as opposed to a 6-inch boot because I like my ankles, my little knobs on my ankles covered, because when I reach down to kick the lift out from under a car, I don't like whacking my ankle. And I don't like a 12-inch boot because they just come up too high. And I like waterproof boots, not only for the purpose of trying to keep my feet dry, but it also keeps the sparks from the torch from going down into your socks. It sounds ridiculous, and you may not think of it when you're buying a pair of boots. Of course, I always buy leather boots, and the webbing on the tongue acts as a little catch for the sparks that come off the torch. I had made the mistake one time, a long time ago, when I was a young buck, to save some money and buy some non-waterproof boots. And the first day I used the cutting torch, I burned the bottoms of my feet because all the little sparks that came down, followed the tongue around, ended up in the bottom of your shoe. And by the time you get your shoe off, it's too late. It's already nuked into you, so forget about it. So that's that. That's all I know about boots. I do not wear steel-toe boots. I have arthritis, which affects my distal phalanges and my toes. So my feet, knuckles look like my toe, or my toe knuckles look like my finger knuckles where they get swollen. And, so I have to wear something with a wide footbed, like a 2E. This is an awful lot of talk about boots. So, but no, I do not wear steel-toe boots because my toes are big. Oops. Boxers or briefs. We won't go there. Opal 500 wants to know if I ever wear toe warmers. I don't wear toe warmers at the shop. I just wear regular plain old cotton socks, I guess they would be, or some sort of synthetic sock. No toe warmers. I wear them when I go hunting sometimes. I put them in my muck boots. C-Top writes, how often you bust your knuckles? I try to avoid it like the plague. I don't know how to say it. I guess having the type of arthritis I have, so I have psoriatic arthritis. So I have psoriasis. A lot of you probably have noticed, red patches on my face and stuff if I don't keep it under control, which oddly enough, it affects my joints. It gives me arthritis, but it also makes my fingernails quite sensitive to getting what they call, I guess it's pernicky. So if I whack my hand real hard or whack my fingernails, all of a sudden, you guys have seen it in videos, not flipping you off, but I get spots under my fingernails, stuff like that from what would usually be a minor impact that wouldn't affect anybody. So I try to avoid smashing my fingers because with arthritis it hurts. So I try to avoid it. So as least often as possible, I guess, is the answer to your question. Let's see, what do we have? Oh, so there's other people answering questions in here, it looks like. So I apologize for not being able to get to everybody's questions. Obviously, at the current time, 1,224 people watching, a lot of people in here commenting. I can't get to all of them. I'm not going to answer your question, Jaron, aloud, but the answer to that. No. Let's see. Ed Burns writes, we're going to skip some car questions for a little bit, get some different genre of questions in here. Why don't you wear mechanics gloves? I do, Ed. As a matter of fact, I wear the gloves that are not here currently. They usually sit up by my sweet hat, my A.M.A hat. I like a pair of like light fitting, like, mechanics gloves, like, the brand, mechanics gloves. They got just like the slip-on ones without the Velcro and stuff. I usually wear those. Somebody had sent me some in the mail, some Grease Monkey ones. They're okay. Their stitching and stuff is pretty poor. They didn't last very long, a week or two in the shop, and they're spanked. I do like wearing them especially when I'm doing tire work, but they just don't last long, in the shop, using them all the time. Plus, you're always taking them on and off. You don't want to get customers' cars all nasty, getting in them, keeping your gloves on, stuff like that. But I do wear mechanics gloves around shop, particularly when it gets cold. The cold affects my hands quite a bit. So where do I get my gloves from? Ask OPL 500. If you're talking about rubber gloves, this is my favorite. So I wear these Diamond Microflex diamond grips in a large. I like them to fit very tightly. Perhaps most gloves I wear an extra large, and these I buy in a large because I want them to fit skin tight. And these things work great. I buy these on Amazon. I buy them by the 1,000. So they're 100 packs. So I buy, a case of 10 packs of 100. That equals 1,000. So that's how I buy them. And they're the most reasonable priced, and they last the longest, in my opinion. Ford Tech Chris wants to know if I've formatted any hard drives lately. I haven't, Chris, but it is a good stress reliever. Let's see. Boy, it looks like Keith is going to town answering questions here. Maybe I should get him on a live chat to answer the questions. Thanks for answering the questions in the comments, Keith. Always appreciated. Let's see. Let's see. Sparky O'Brien wants to know how many mil those gloves are. Honestly, I don't know. Mike Mayfield writes, Bud or Bud Light? The answer to that question would be Yingling. How many mils? I don't know. I don't know if it states on the box right away. I will attest to their quality, though. They are good quality for medical use, and they're non-sterile. Single use only. I've tried multiple other brands. Those are just the ones I like to use. It's getting cold in here. Jaron Wilson wants to know if I've had any burritos recently, referring back to an old video where Mrs. O wasn't here, and I had to fend for myself, and the gas station burritos destroyed me. So, no, we avoid those also. Let's see. Oops. Oops. Keith's getting quite a few questions here in the comment box. I wish we could have the comment box on the video stream when it goes live on YouTube. Unfortunately, we can't without some kind of screen recording stuff of some sorts. Perhaps I could look into that at some point. Michael Burrows writes, any good mountain bike routes out there? Yes, Michael, we are fortunate enough to live right next to what they call the Finger Lakes Trails. So it is a trail that runs all the way across all of New York State, which makes for some excellent single track. If you're into mountain biking, we also have Sullivan Park, that is close by in Corning, which is like a wildlife reserve, I guess, public land, which has some crazy mountain bike single track on it. A lot of good downhill stuff. So yes, we do. Where are we? Everybody needs a Keith. Isn't that the truth? So Steve Desmaris, I guess it is. Do you use Mobil 1 in your cars? I do, Steve. I do use Mobil 1 as my oil of choice in my own vehicles. Bob McCade writes, it works every time till it doesn't. Eric O. And that is 100% the truth. It works until it doesn't. Or it's good until it's not. Man, I gotta turn on my heater. You guys wait right here. I'm freezing. Oh, it's cold as a banshee up in this place. Let's see. Yep, Colin writes 60% of the time it works every time. And that's true. What else we got here? Thanks, Coach. Looks like there's a lot of conversations going on. Don't mind me for the dead air. I wouldn't make a good DJ on the radio. Steve's Auto and Truck writes, did you ever do the college students' head gaskets in that Altima? So he's referring to a video where I had an Altima that had a intermittent misfire on a hot soak. So after the vehicle sat, I don't remember what video that was in. I think that was in conjunction with another video. I let it sit with the cooling system pressurized, went over, had the spark plugs out, and you could see one of the cylinders starting to fill up with coolant. But to answer the question, the folks sold that car, sold it dirt cheap, as is, stated the problem the person they sold it to, and then elected to buy a different car. I'm eating a peak starburst now, in case anybody's wondering. Let's see. Let's see. JRRYC1 writes, want to do exhaust manifolds, 4 broken bolts, smiley face, bring it. Live on exhaust manifolds. Joe K writes, can I do another video on the OTC hub grappler? Yeah, perhaps, Joe, if we get a vehicle in that needs a front wheel bearing that is a precedent style, that is my tool of choice. The Harrow Rider 03088 writes, Eric, have you ever been really hurt in the shop? I have not. I've had no catastrophic injuries. Richard 440 writes, do you own the car wash / laundromat? I do not. Although people come over, so laundromat that's next door, people come over and scream at me because my effing laundromat is messed up. And I tell them I don't own it. And then they get all embarrassed and they leave. Thomas Drlich, he writes, oops. Appreciate the videos and information you out all the time. I love learning more about cars and become quite proficient at basic maintenance, and thank you. Well, thank you, Thomas, for the donation. I'm glad that our channel has helped you along with helping others, from what I'm told. I think that's great. I mean, that's the purpose of it, right? Help everybody out from beginning to end, from beginning, mechanic to somebody who just likes watching videos to, getting into some more in-depth case study for, guys who can advance their knowledge. I also learn a lot, from YouTube myself. So it's not a one-way thing here. Let's see. Flat Rate Master, I just added you as a moderator. Just so you know, you're blue wrenching it now, baby. The Tractor Wrangler, he writes, I like it when you have problems that you have not run into yet. Those are the best kind of problems, in my opinion, because you get to learn something. You get to advance a little. Don't want to keep mentioning the upcoming video on the freestyle, whatever it was for there. That is a system I was unfamiliar with. So, you know, you get to learn as you go. I do have in the works, I'm making or working on making a video about diagnostic approach, you know, diagnostic approach and logical thinking as far as, you know, when you bring a car in or approach any sort of problem. This can apply to a lot of different aspects of life and problem solving, maybe not life, but problem solving skills is, you know, what's your next step, what's your approach, and, you know, what's going to be the most efficient way to attack this. And this is going to be geared towards, you know, automotive diagnostic problems, both mechanical and electrical. So I'm hoping to have that video up at some point when I can figure out how I want to do it. I'm not much of a teacher as far as, yeah, I can bring in a car and fix it, but, you know, perhaps I'm not the best with words when it comes to trying to explain something and get it out a format that makes sense. Derek McWhirter, I think we've already spoke to him once. I keep picking the same people out here somehow. Strangest or most out of the ordinary meat you have ever tried? Was it good? Or would you try it again? Well, I don't know. I cooked a woodchuck once, you know, like, you know, woodchuck, groundhog. That was pretty nasty. As a kid, I ate various birds that I shot with my BB gun. Most of them were pretty nasty. As far as like something that is available in the store, I don't know. Somebody just sent me some beef jerky, sent me some alligator jerky. So Keith from New Level Auto, he writes, Blazing Bruce wants advice on opening a shop. Let me see if I can find this comment. That is, I guess have him ask the question again, Keith. Hopefully it pops up here. Well, we're waiting for that. Lewis wants to know, is your county a shotgun? Deer County, no, we can use rifles. You can use shotguns if you choose to do so, but let's see. Wait for this Blazing Bruce comment to come across. That's right, Smitty. Woodchuck does not taste good. Don't eat it. Did you eat crow? I haven't ate crow yet, Steven's Auto, but I did. There's a guy on YouTube that I follow who cooked crow. Who is it? The Scott Ray Project. Fantastic guy over in England. Does head to tail butcheries. So I hope I'm not missing it. Mike Mayfield wants to know if we have a handgun season. You can use a handgun anytime you're allowed to use a rifle. You know, a centerfire handgun. Don't hold me to that, though. Ken Stanford writes, have you ever used a Handtech scope? I do, and I own one, so I have used it. I prefer my Pico. Let's see. Benjamin Stockton, he writes, what is my favorite meal at home and at a restaurant? I would much rather, I guess to answer that in two parts, I would much rather eat at home than eat at a restaurant. Mrs. O puts most of the local restaurants to shame, I would say. And I'm a meat and potatoes guy. You know, I like a good sirloin and like mashed potatoes and, you know, real corn, not corn out of a can, you know, corn that we've harvested. So that's, I'm pretty simple when it comes to that. Let's see. Jay Zeus writes, what scan tool under $1,000 do you recommend? The Launch Touch Pro or the Altel MK808? Or what other in your experience? So I have used and owned Launch Touch Pro. I just want to see if this MK808 is one I'm thinking of. What? Can't you get the Maxi Sys Mini? Let me just see something here real quick. Oops. Let's see how much they cost. Yeah, so I'll tell the Maxi Sys, the 906, the 905. Yeah, gosh, the 906 is a little more than $1,000, but I think it's going to be a lot better scan tool. Not being familiar with the Autel MK808, I can't answer that question because I'm not familiar with that scan tool. I do own the Launch Touch Pro. It's okay. There is no bidirectional controls on it. I personally would probably put just a little bit more with your 1,000 if you could, and perhaps look into the Autel Maxi Sys Mini. But not being familiar with the MK808, I can't really offer you great advice on that. Short of having them both in my hands and comparing. Perhaps you can do a little bit of Google searching or search on the independent makers' sites to see what functions one has that the other one doesn't. Like I said, I do own the Launch Touch Pro. Don't use it a lot, but it's a very similar interface to all the launch tools in general, so it makes it pretty easy to pick up and use. Oops. So John Ringo writes, try that bacon jerky. It's awesome. That was the first bag I dove into, John. Of course, I had to take the gator jerky home for the kids. They wanted to try that. And then I think I'm in a bag of wild boar jerky right now. So it's all fantastic. Hitter Kendrick, 66, I guess it is. What do you think of Actron code readers for us DIY folk? I actually did a video on the Actron. You're going to ask me what model it is. I'm going to have to get it. I don't keep numbers in my head. Of course, it doesn't say on it which model it is. I got to get my video up because I can't see. So this is my little Actron code reader. I think these are a couple $100. OTC had a big giveaway on them for SMA, where we gave away, I think, 7 or 8 of them. These are fantastic for the DIY as far as being able to read data, monitors reliably. These are fantastic little handheld scan tools. So these, OTC, Actron, same company. Great little scan tools. I actually like these. Let's see. Get my video back up. Keep clicking off my video. It's just the way it works. Oops, where is this? Feed still feeding here? Ah, crap. My feed stopped. Let me just refresh my page real quick. Get my comments back up. Sometimes things get a little cattywampus here. There we go. VW Wrenchy, who kindly sent me some fluid film stickers upside down. Won't say his real name, but I know it now. He writes, do many of your customers run synthetic oil or conventional? That's a good question, VW Wrenchy. I would say that if the car that they drive requires conventional oil or was, built around a conventional oil spec, most of them stick with conventional. If the vehicle demands, Dexo spec, or full synthetic, say, 540 Euro spec, we'll go with that. I would say I have very few customers that have cars that can run conventional, make the change to synthetic. Maybe like 5% of the customers that have cars that are suitable for conventional actually run or request synthetic oil in them. Most of them still are, stick with 3,000 mile intervals on regular conventional oil. Let's see. RSTLR 73 writes, is Eric a Glock guy? I'm not. I do not own a single Glock. I own a lot of Smith & Wessons. How is, I guess a question for you guys, how's the video feed and audio coming over? I guess I shouldn't ask this an hour and a half into the, or however far we are in. Kevin McMillan writes, how important is having a scope to hand for working on cars? First question, extremely important. In the shop, having a scope to prove component failures is necessary, 100% necessary in some cases. And in cases where it's not 100% necessary, it definitely can shortcut your process and give you definitive answers. Bottom line, there's no question asked. Scope versus multimeter. I mean, that's like, hot dog versus, a Delmonico, it's night and day. What's your plan for when electric cars take over? Hopefully at that point, Kevin, I'm long since passed and on the other side of the sod. I assume as long as big oil rules this world, I don't really have to worry about that anytime in the near future. M&P 40 writes, Jeff Flanagan. I do have the M&P. I got the M&P in a 9mm Pro. I got the M&P Shield. I got the Bodyguard. So yeah, I do like my M&Ps. I got the M&P 22. It was actually made by Walther, not Ruger, but Smith & Wesson. But yes. Mike Robbins wants to know when I'm going to get my own TV show. Probably never. Nobody wants to watch this crap. Keith wants to know if I got the hat. More than likely, Keith. I get a lot of, oddly enough, I get a lot of hats in the mail. People don't like my Jeep hats, so they send me Jeep hats or other hats. So, and I do wear them. I might not wear them on the show because this is the face of SMA. I guess it would be. It's my channel. What we'll do is we'll just take this up. So it's a 2-hour special to the 7:45 mark. Never dreamed to be sitting here this long. So we'll just go here for another little bit. I'll leave it up. Whoever wants to come back and watch through 2 hours of me rambling and attempting to answer questions. Anthony or Anatoly Tony, I got a question for you. If you can help, my car stalls randomly. Been to a few shops, can't find a problem. I'm suspecting a faulty fuel pump. It's just my guess. Intermittents are tough, Tony. I'm assuming that's your first name. Intermittents are tough. A car comes to the shop with a complaint of, like your complaint, random stalling. First and foremost, always question my customer and ask them when, how often, does anything help? Does anything promote the stalling? Like, yeah, I hit these railroad tracks and, spits and sputters and then it stalls, or, it seems to do it, when it's raining. Is there environmental reasons that make this happen, or is it, extremely random? So I guess with that being said, if it was an intermittent problem, and let's say this is only happening once every couple of weeks, that is very difficult to diagnose unless you're willing to, shotgun parts at it, which I will not do ever unless the customer came in and said, here's a fuel pump. Will you put this in my car? And I'd say, gladly, I'd put it in and park it back outside. If your vehicle, let's say your vehicle was stalling, a couple times throughout the day, good chance I can duplicate it. In that case, if you suspect it was a faulty fuel pump, first thing I would do is, or if I suspect it was a faulty fuel pump, fuel pressure gauge would be on it. I'd have a scope on whatever controls the fuel pump, current clamp around it, and then, perhaps back at the fuel pump. So, hog up all 4 channels real quick, drive it till it quits, and see if that's it. If it's not, you at least know what it's not. And sometimes that's as valuable as, knowing what it is, because you can definitively say the car stalled, fuel pump was turned on, it's still drawing 5 amps, it's not our fuel pump. We still maintain pressure. Now you can go on with further testing to say, was it, loss of crank signal, I can list the possibilities a mile long, but that would be my approach. Oh, we got President Donald Trump up in here now. Wow. Keith DeFazio writes, thinking outside the box is the difference between a technician and a great technician. So I don't know if that's in response to somebody's, what they said there or what the deal is. Oops. Ooh. They're zipping by. Let's see what Herrick, my 08 Buick Allure. So I guess that's a LaCrosse 3.8. It stinks on fuel mileage of late. Yeah, it runs great. No codes, any suggestions? 17 MPGs combined. Knowing that you're from the great Northeast, if I remember correctly, we have lots of things to consider, in sub-zero temperatures that we live in is, obviously ambient temperature, engine idle times, different fuel grades, in the winter, oxygenated fuels. We have a lot combating us, particularly if you make, the winter tire switch. Now you've got the concern of rolling resistance of the vehicle in combination with, everything else that makes it consume more fuel. I guess I've never really tracked down fuel consumption complaints in the wintertime because it seems, more often than not, that's, if we're going to get a fuel consumption complaint, it's always in the winter. Very rarely do I see it in the summer. I would be, on that car, I'd be looking to see, is the car in fuel control? Are the oxygen sensors working as intended? What are my fuel trims? And then perhaps look at, mode 6 data to see what the switch times, my lean to rich switch times, am I getting, kind of borderline of having a bad O2 sensor? Look at various inputs. But if the car's in fuel control, thermostat's all the way up to operating temperature, because the thermostat's stuck where, let's say your car's only warming up to 170, it's supposed to be 190, but it's not low enough to set, your PO 128 for insufficient coolant temp, it's going to use more fuel. Fuel mileage complaints, wheel alignments, brake drag, anything to alleviate rolling resistance. So that's my thoughts on that. Wish I could help you more. And we'll get wrapped up here pretty quick. Cuba Rodriguez writes, how did the garden do? You never updated on the other channel selling any SMA sweats or gear soon, or do you already? So my garden turned out fantastic this year. I did not do any updates on the outdoor channel. I just haven't had the physical time. I should though. I did start that channel. Probably, should have thought about that a little bit harder, I guess, before I did it. But it's there. Perhaps this summer I can get in and do some updates on that. Am I selling any SMA sweats? I don't. I gotta find out. I gotta get the logistics of that so I can actually handle that and do that. That is a question that's asked often. Let's see. Oops. James says that his wife wants to know about my wife's timing belt. Well, James, you can tell your wife that, same thing I tell my wife. I tell my wife I'm going to get it done. She doesn't need to bug me every 6 or 7 months to remind me, No, it'll get done. I promise. Or it'll break and it'll get towed here and then I'll fix it. Brad Hogan writes, roughly how much to install a Helilock on a Ford Expedition 03? I've blown out 2 spark plugs on a number 2 cylinder. Truck runs great unless I'm on the highway. I assume he's talking about a helicoil. So your 03s, your 5.4s, pretty notorious for blowing them spark plugs out. I have a video on the method that I use to replace or helicoil thread insert, I guess to be correct, a blown out spark plug. Same method I use on those 5.4s. Let's see, what do you say, number 2 cylinder? So it's an easy one to get to. it should be in and out within an hour. If it's already blown out 2 spark plugs in that cylinder, no guarantees without seeing it. That is one I'd want to see, because if it's already been molested, overboard, you know, you may be putting a head on it at this point. So sight unseen. If it's doable, you're looking, you know, probably an hour's worth of time plus parts. Let's see. President Donald Trump writes, Eric, the limo needs ball joints. Do you want the job? Call and make an appointment. Mr. Trump will get you in at our nearest convenience. Gabe's Garage wants to know if I got new internet. I hope that's a question, because it looks better than it did. We did. I did upgrade the internet here. Mike Mayfield writes, give us some of that New York, forget about it. Mike, I'm from upstate New York. If you want to get a real legit forget about it, you got to talk to Keith. He's from Staten Island. He can give you the, you know, hey, take it easy. You know, the stuff that they say down there. You know, forget about it. I can't. All right, we'll do one more. We're up on our 2-hour mark. I guess one question to you guys. Typically Wednesday evenings after work are free for me, in the sense that Mrs. O and the Chillins have some stuff that they do, and they don't come back till a little bit later. Do the A.M.As, these Ask Me Anything live events, do they suit your fancy? Do you like them? Should we try to do them without promise on Wednesdays around the same time that we did today? Crap, I only got 2 Starbursts left. I got these when me and Mrs. O went to the movies the other night. Let's see, getting some yeses coming across with my 30-second delay. And it seems to be kind of a win. I haven't seen a no. I don't know if somebody would take the time to write no if they didn't want it. One question we just went by, New York and Chicago style pizza. I would say New York style pizza. I was in Chicago, tried the pizza. It was good. It was thick. Yeah, the comments are in Warp Drive Schmitty. Well, let it be said then, if at all possible, Wednesdays will be allocated for the SMA, A.M.A. Well, that sounds pretty good. So we'll try to do that. I can't promise you. I mean, if I get in a situation on a Wednesday evening where I'm working late, can't take the time, I'm sick, tired, cold, or just plain don't want to do it, we're not gonna. But I will try to do that. Does 5:45 Eastern Standard Time seem to be okay for everybody? I hope it is, because I can't do it any sooner. You know, I might be able to hold off till 6, but I'll wait for that comment to come across too. All right. Seems to be everybody's agreeing on it. So I guess we'll tentatively leave it at that. Again, I wish that I had the ability and knowledge and prior experience to be able to answer all of your automotive car questions. However, I don't. But I'll do the best I can with what little bit I know and the bit of information that is provided. In the question ask course, you can see that we don't do just automotive questions. We'll answer questions as far as Chicago or New York style pizza, and perhaps what my favorite color of Starburst is, or whatever questions you seem to ask. I try to mix it up a little bit, and I guess we'll leave it at that. So at any rate, we're down to 1,130 people watching out of the initial 1,200 or so. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for coming along for the first SMA A.M.A official live video. If you missed the beginning half or want to watch it again for whatever reason, feel free to go back. It'll be up on YouTube here shortly. You know where to find us. If you're here, you're probably subscribed to my channel. If you haven't, go down below and hit that subscribe button, baby. Click the notification bell. Find us where you can find us. Google+, Facebook, Patreon. Did not pop up on the screen because I don't have the ability to hear. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.